The ball comes across over his head, 1-1.
There we go. That's 7 o'clock. So
is it? Right.
I've hit the button.
Right, give me 3, 2, 1, Matt, will you?
That should be us live. Yeah, away you go.
Welcome from Table Tennis Scotland. My best this evening is British para table tennis star. He holds world and European medals, is a 2-time British champion and a USA Open champion. Welcome to Martin Perry. Colin is having a night off tonight, but back in the chair on the panel is Mark Lundberg. Mark is a national selector and he is also a former international table tennis player. Once again, Matt will pick up your questions and comments on YouTube, and we look forward to a very interesting evening. I was fortunate just before Christmas to listen to Martin giving an address in Edinburgh as an after-dinner speaker, and it was absolutely outstanding. So I'm really, really pleased to have Martin with us. And Martin, I'm going to begin by saying the 8th of May 1994, something happened. Over to you.
Yeah, something happened indeed. That was the day I was born. So it's been 26 years since then, but I've had a lot of fun along the way, and it's hopefully long may that continue.
Yeah, and you're one of 4, I believe. And you've always been sporty. So can you tell us how you got into sport in the first place, and the problems you had, or whatever? Just give us a history of your sporting experiences prior to table tennis.
So you're absolutely right. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. So my poor mother had a lot on her plate, definitely, that's for sure. But yeah, it was through my brothers that I definitely got into sport in general. You know, obviously along the way I found table tennis, and it went from there. But growing up, you know, you've got, as I said, four young boys in the one household. That's naturally going to be a lot of energy. Naturally, you know, a lot of carry on, and the best way to keep ourselves out of trouble was to go out and, you know, like a lot of boys in the west of Scotland, play football in the beginning. So we'd all play football together. You know, and would play games like tag and hide and seek. So there was just that was sort of my first introduction to sport, was just sort of family fun. And it wasn't really until that I started going to school and you know, I really benefited from sport. It gave me a way of life that I wasn't disabled, because I could always play in some way or another. You know, there wasn't really any way that I was restricted. So from a very young age, I was so drawn to sport just for the fact that it made me feel like I could do anything.
And did you have a natural eye? You say you played a number of sports. Did you find that once you played one sport, the next sport, it was easy to transfer? Did you have that natural eye for a ball, do you think?
Yeah, I think as you said, you know, if you're, you know, half decent at one sport, it's easier to, I'm not saying you're going to go and be good at another sport, but you can definitely pick up a lot of transferable skills, you know, like coordination and as you said, sort of picking up the ball with your eye and things like that. So I think just playing a lot of sports growing up, they naturally feed into one another. You know, you hear about a lot of great athletes that are good at a couple of sports, and obviously they excel in the one that they do. So I think it's just natural that the more sport you play, the more that feeds into each and every other one. And, you know, for me, I was exposed to so much sport growing up. You know, as I said, I had my brothers who we'd predominantly play football, but then as I went to high school in particular, you know, I ended up playing for the basketball team. It was an able-bodied school, so it was an able-bodied team. I was obviously the only disabled guy in the squad. You know, in PE classes, we played hockey, so I'd try my best at that, but I had more fun in goals, just jumping around with the pads on, trying to stop the ball. So even things like that, you know, there's ways that you can still get involved. And then you know, it's just a whole host. You know, I went to a few track meets when I was maybe like 12, 13, like athletics, and you just running and doing things like that. And I think, as you said, you know, that coordination and that sort of transferable skills definitely feeds into other sports. And it wasn't until I think 2011. So what am I there? 16 years old, I think, 2011. I was when I found table tennis. It was through Scottish Disability Sport. I had been playing, well, actually before that, I'd been playing rugby for my school, able-bodied rugby, and it was in the Renfrewshire sort of constituency Sevens Cup sort of thing, so it was all the high schools in Renfrewshire would come together and they'd all play, and we ended up winning that competition, myself and my teammates, and there was a picture in the local paper, and it's just all of us having a great time, covered head to toe in muck, and we're just having a great laugh. And someone from Scottish Disability Sport, thankfully they seen that photograph in the paper and they got in contact with the school, who in turn contacted my parents and sort of set up a meeting through that, because they seen this para athlete competing at an able-bodied level and they knew nothing about him. So they contacted the school, as I said, got in contact with my parents, and I was invited to a residential summer camp at Inverclyde.
Martin, if okay, if I just stop you there,
absolutely.
Because it's interesting, because the camps at Largs, the SDS camps at Largs, was an annual event, and I know Martin, I don't want to steal Martin's thunder. I helped to run them for many. Well, I was just one of the staff for many years. At that time, Richard Brickley was heavily involved, and also at that time we had our first para table tennis international, which was Lara Ferguson, who Martin may or may not know. I'm going to ask him that question in a minute. And Lara represented Scotland in both para table tennis and straight table tennis. So those summer schools were absolutely vital, and it brought in lots of different athletes from lots of different sports. You got a wide mixture over those few days. You had to go at everything, and if it wasn't for that, then Martin might not have been picked up as a table tennis player. So sorry, Martin, that now I'm going to go back to you, 2011, and you're off to summer school.
You've described it better than I ever could. It was a fantastic multi-day, multi-sport facility, and as you say, we tried lots of different sports. And it was on the final day that Terry from Drumchapel was there, with I think Lucy Elliott and Scott Barton and guys like that, and so they were top junior and cadet players at the time, and they came along, and a lot of them had never seen people with disabilities before, and they couldn't hide from it at this event, so they just got stuck in and they were great. But I totally think that without that Scottish Disability Sport summer camp, I don't think there was any way of me getting into table tennis. It was something that, it was a sport up until 16 years of age I'd never even seen before, because when you ask a lot of older players, you ask how they got into the sport, and they say, oh, it was youth clubs, and the youth clubs are pretty much a thing of the past. So that's where obviously a lot of table tennis came from, especially in Scotland. So for me, without that summer camp, I don't think I'd have found table tennis, and I'm so glad that I got invited along.
So I'm going to stick with this 2011. So on that, it was about a 3-day course, wasn't it, normally, about that? So you'd have turned up, you'd probably played a bit of basketball, a bit of maybe a bit of cricket, a bit of short tennis, a bit of balls. But then somehow you came to table tennis, and then Terry McLernan, who is the chairman of Scottish Table Tennis, happened to be there. Now, would you say that was superb organisation or chance?
I've got to say it's a bit of both. Terry could quite easily have not turned up that day, but equally Scottish Disability Sport, they brought in some top coaches from a whole host of sports, like you mentioned. And one of the most memorable sports for me on that camp, outside of table tennis, of course, was actually archery. And I was like, there's no, how am I going to be able to use a bow and arrow? It's not going to happen. And then the girl next to me, she was blind, had no vision whatsoever, and had mild cerebral palsy. And she stepped up and just fired this arrow straight down the middle. And I was like, well, I need to give it a go now. you know, and I was so blown away. That was just amazing. I couldn't believe it. And so that was really great for me to see, because as someone that, as I said, grew up with three older brothers, they were all able-bodied, you know, so I was the only disabled person I knew until I started playing for an ambulant disability football team when I was about 12, 13. So I'd only really come across disability for like 3 years at this point. And then to see this girl step up, blind, CP, fire an arrow straight as you like, I was like, wow, that's amazing. I'm going to give it a go. So I tried the archery, and obviously I had a little bit of assistance, but that was good fun. And then I think we stopped for lunch, and after lunch, Terry was like the first or second sort of activity that you went to, and he was there. And obviously the initial barrier was, how was I going to hold the bat? And we came up with some device that we fashioned from what I can only describe as a tea towel with like Velcro wraps around it. We basically just wrapped this sort of piece of cloth around my forearm and made like a little sleeve almost, and we tucked the bat handle down the sleeve, and then Terry got the Velcro and like strapped it around my arm, and he was like, right, on you go. And it was so primitive and basic and dangerous. The bat ended up flying out a couple of times, but I had fun, you know. I had fun, and you know what Terry's like. He's got such a great personality, and at the end of it, he came up to me and he's like, "Did you enjoy that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course, right. You're coming to the club then." And that was it. You know, he just kind of told me that I was going to his club because I'd had fun, and thankfully I turned up a few weeks later.
It's interesting. Was you the only one? It's very difficult because I often look back at junior table tennis players. Did they make senior internationals, or even junior footballers? When I look at professional youth teams, was you the only one out that group who became an internationalist, or do you remember from that mixed group of people? Oh yeah, so and so, he made it in basketball, or he badminton player, or.
Well, I know for sure on the same summer camp that I was on, there was a Scottish player called Kevin McCormack, and he represented Scotland at the Para-Hungarian Open in 2013. So I know that he went on to represent Scotland, but I think it wasn't very long after that at least I'm sure he did. It wasn't very long after that he stopped playing. And you know, so it's from then really that I've been known the one that's kind of kicked on and pursued it a little bit more, sort of, you know, wanting to do it a little bit more than everyone else, and it's certainly paid off. I'm not complaining.
Yeah, no, excellent. You know, I mean, a great advert for the summer schools. As I say, I attended many of them. They were brilliantly organised. At the time, it was Gavin McLeod who was organising it. When still Gavin? Was it still Gavin?
Yeah. Gavin's a great guy. He's still with SDS, as far as I'm aware. He's a fantastic guy. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, right. I'm going to bring in Mark Lundberg to quiz Martin a little bit, or ask him a question, or over to you, Mark.
Hi, Martin. I just wanted to maybe start with the different para table tennis classes and the class that you play in. If you could talk us through what different classes out there and maybe why you're in your class, and also to bring up, I think in other Paralympic sports, I think swimming was an example where people get reclassified. Is an example of that in table tennis? If you can just talk us through that.
Yeah, absolutely. So for male and female, we have 11 classifications. 1 to 5 is your wheelchair classifications. So a class 1, rule of thumb is the lower the number, the more severely disabled you are. So you don't necessarily, it has no impact on your ability to play the game. It's just that's your level of disability. So a class 1, who we have some fantastic athletes, they tend to be very high neck break or spinal cord injuries from a very high point in the spine. They have very limited arm control. They need the bat strapped to their arm, similar to myself. Little to no trunk control whatsoever. You know, so these are very severely disabled guys, but the stuff they can do with a table tennis ball is amazing. And then as you progress through the classifications up towards a class 5, you are, for want of a better term, slowly becoming more able-bodied. You know, so you've got a lot more control of your limbs, your trunk, So our class 5 sort of shining light in GB is Jack Hunter Spivey, and he has sort of mild/severe cerebral palsy from the waist down. So Jack's got full trunk control, can control his arms completely. He can stand up, but he can't really walk. He can maybe, it's quite funny, we often joke all the time, like Jack will take like 2 steps and then just melt into the ground. So we have a joke about that and stuff, and Jack's a great guy. So he's our class 5. So, you know, that's a severe jump from a class 1. So as you go up those increments in classification, you get more and more control over the limbs that you've got and things like that. Then you have classes 6 to 10. And similar situation, the lower the number, the more severe disability. So I'm a class 6, which means I am the lowest of the standing classes. And so sort of general rule of thumb would be 4 limbs severely affected, or 2 limbs on either the same half or side of the body severely affected. So for me, for those that don't know, I've got my right arm stops below the wrist, so I don't have my hand. My left arm stops at my elbow, and my left leg, it stops through the knee joint. So I have to have a prosthetic leg to, you know, just not just get through everyday life, but obviously to play table tennis, I have a prosthetic leg. So I'm severely affected. So that puts me in the lowest classification. And then you slowly, you know, as I said, go through 7, 8, 9, and 10. You get more and more able-bodied and more control over what you have. So the class 10 that we have in the UK, that is the number 1 class 10, is Kim Daybell, who isn't just a fantastic table tennis player. I've got to give him a shout out and say that he's doing an incredible job at the moment. He's actually a junior doctor in London, so he's doing fantastic stuff for the table tennis and Paralympic community, being an NHS frontline worker. So good on him. So Kim's disability is he's missing his right pectoral muscle, and he doesn't have his full right hand. He's got like two digits as opposed to 5. So in terms of table tennis, Kim plays left-handed, so that would have a tremendous impact on his ability to play. So you know you can go through the classifications and sort of get more or less severe depending on what direction you're traveling. And then a class 11 is learning impairment. You know, so it's quite a severe impact on IQ level and functionality on that sense. But classification definitely changes for athletes all the time. You know, it's something that, in one sense, I'm fortunate that I'll never change, because I'm a Stonewall 6. You know, you don't get much more wrong with you than having no hands and 1 leg. But yeah, so classification changes, it happens, and it's part and parcel of Paralympic sport. You know, and it's just something that you have to be prepared for, especially if you know that you are a borderline case, or if you feel you could get, you know, a deteriorating condition. And that tends to be where from my experience, you know, the classification changes tend to, you know, come from your condition changing. You know, everyone thinks that, you know, well, if you're disabled, that's it, but it's not. It's something that over time your body just takes more of an impact, and it has more of an effect on you. You know, so that's one of the main reasons for classification changes, is just that the disability has changed, causing the athlete to change the way they play, the way they live, the way they do everything. So that can be it can be a major point of controversy. Of course it can. You know, if you believe an athlete is in one class and then they don't get given that and things like that. But I think we could do a whole nother live chat on just classification, so I won't go on too much longer.
I mean, obviously leading up to things like Paralympic, how close, because if somebody's training and putting like the work you're putting at Sheffield along as your teammates, I mean, if you're going to Tokyo in classification, could they change it in the lead up to it quite quickly, or and then all of a sudden you're in their classification, or is there a cut-off point? Or
so great question. So you now can't, they've kind of changed the rules a little bit, so you can't be reclassified in Paralympic year. So if you make it to sort of the year of the Paralympics, then you're pretty much safe. But I know personally guys that it's happened to, where they've qualified for a particular games, and then they've been told after they've qualified that their classification is going to get changed, and they're going to have to try and re-qualify in the next class. And you know, that's such a, I can't imagine what that must be like to go through, because you've obviously worked so hard to to get to the pinnacle of your sport, and you reach it, and then someone goes, actually, we're going to move the goalposts for you. So it's that must be so heartbreaking and tough to deal with, but it happens. That's Paralympic sport.
Perfect. Thanks. I'll go for a question on YouTube now that's come in from our loyal Ben Hart, who's with us every week. So obviously you mentioned other sports that you were playing, but why pick table tennis? What made you stick with table tennis after trying all these different sports?
It's the most obvious answer. It's so much fun. I've yet to meet someone who hasn't enjoyed playing table tennis, and that for me that was the first attraction. I'm sure we'll get onto it later on about what made me sort of decide to push and go forward, but it was the fun. It was just it's such a great game. It's so quick, and I refuse to believe anyone that says they've not enjoyed it.
Thanks.
Mark, do you just want to take that second YouTube question from Shannon Brown? Wow.
Yeah. So there's a couple in from Shannon. I'll go over the first one that's been asked about preparing yourself for a hard game. I mean, obviously playing at high level tournaments. How do you prepare, or basically, or how do you talk or prepare yourself for a hard game? Is the question.
Yeah, so it's different for every athlete, but for me, I like to put my headphones on. I like to get quite sort of psyched up. So I like to listen to a lot of music with a lot of heavy bass and things like that. So for me, it's all about music, putting it on and making sure that I go over a few things in my head, about like preparation, like what I've done in terms of leading up to the tournament. I give myself confidence knowing that I've trained on the right things. I've put in a lot of hard work with my teammates and my coaches, and that gives me a lot of confidence. And then of course, the closer you get to the match, the more nervous you get. Every athlete gets nervous. That's just a fact. But it's just all about using that emotion and trying to benefit from it. It's something that I work with a sports psychologist on. It's if you, in a sense, you almost can't control if you win or lose, because you're always going to lose at some point. But for me, the way I try and approach every game is if I am going to lose, I'm going to lose on my terms and play the way I want to play. And if I get defeated, then at least I can hold my head high and say I played the way I wanted to play, and that definitely comes from preparation. So for me, it's just a lot of music and a lot of time just to reflect and think about what I want to do on the table.
Actually, it leads me on to a question just as you were talking there about para table tennis, where maybe different from able-bodied table tennis, where identifying opponents' weaknesses, a case of studying opponents, I'm sure there are obvious weaknesses in para table tennis. Is that something you go into where it acts as a set tactic from game to game, where I could go to a tournament and not really know a player, but playing in these different tournaments, is a case identifying that this going into a game?
Absolutely, and sometimes the easiest way to identify a weakness is just to identify the disability. So and some people think, oh, you can't do that, you can't play on the disability, and it's like, well, you absolutely can, and you must. Because at the end of the day, Paralympic table tennis is reaching new heights with every competition. And the ability is always on the rise. So the easiest way to get an advantage over your opponent is to use their disability against them. That's why you're in the same class, is because you're there or thereabouts, somewhat equally disabled. So how can you use that against them? Because we've got some great players. So for example, if you were playing someone of like, let's say a short stature, the first thing in my mind would be to, right, well, I'm going to serve short, because they're going to struggle to get over the table and to return that ball. And that's sport. We're there to win. We're not just there to sort of highlight what can be done if you have a disability or not. We're competing at the highest level to perform for our country. So you've got to analyze the disability that you're up against and look at how you can use that.
Perfect. Dave?
Yes, I want to go back to 2011 and talk about Terry McLernan. Now, most people know Terry as the chairman of Table Tennis Scotland, but believe it or not, Terry is first and foremost a coach, and secondly, he is a chairman. I can assure you, that's exactly what it is. I want to talk about Terry picking you up, Terry taking you to Drumchapel, and Terry pointing you on the road. So this is a Terry McLernan 5 minutes, please, Martin.
Absolutely. I could go on all night about the guy. He's amazing. You know, you touched on it a little bit there when you say Terry picking me up. He literally used to pick me up from the house in Paisley. You know, take time out of his day to come and collect me and take me to Drumchapel, and he'd do the same journey at night, you know, because my parents can't drive, you know, so he knew that I'd be relying on public transport and it'd take me, you know, sometimes hours to get to the club. So he used to come and pick me up, and he's always been so supportive, you know. And I remember before I, you know, pushed on and tried to, you know, make somewhat of a name for myself in the para table tennis world, you know, Terry would just always make sure that, and he still to this day, make sure that all the kids in the club are having fun, you know, and that's the main thing, is to make sure they're having fun and enjoying it. Because if you're having fun and enjoying it, you're going to come back, and that's when, you know, obviously if you pick up the bug, as it were, you know, that you want to kick on, then Terry's there to 100% support you. But he just wants to make sure that everyone that steps into his club remembers the club for the right reasons, and that's, you know, that they had fun, that it was a friendly atmosphere, that it was almost like, you know, a big family. You know, everyone just has a great time, and Terry's such a great guy. You know, I remember one of the things that he told me very early on in my playing career was, you know, only you can go achieve your goals, but I'll always be here to support you when you need that. You know, and he's done that. Terry's been exceptional over the years for me. You know, putting on like private training sessions, opening up the club just for me to get in, and things like that, and getting sparring partners and coaches and stuff just for me to play, and that's something that he didn't have to do. You know, he's as you said, he's a coach, he's the CEO, but he's also a volunteer. You know, he does a lot of the stuff that he does just because he's such a great guy. So, you know, it's wonderful to see the retention that the club's got, especially from the juniors. You know, there's always new kids coming into the club, and there's always such a vibrant social side to it as well, and it's brilliant. It's just he's some guy.
I mean, I do mention this every week on purpose, purposefully, because that paternal coach, the first coach you have, and obviously moving from Logs, the summer school at Logs, is so important. You know, before I've mentioned with Mark, and Eric was the paternal coach for Gavin and Mark, and you know, it really is so important. Okay, so you're at the club now, and you've decided to take table tennis a little bit serious. Were you at that same time you're playing at Drumchapel, Martin? Were you still attending the odd SDS thing at Fife Institute or Aberdeen or Glasgow, or were you sort of going on a joint venture, or were you, if I can, I'm just curious to know how your career developed from there.
It was mainly just table tennis, you know, from picking up a bat for the first time. I've kind of made that my only sport. But as I said, it took probably about a year to 18 months before I actually decided that I wanted to pursue it. You know, so it was mainly just table tennis at the Drum, where I would that's all I would do really, you know, a couple of nights a week. You know, but it was actually watching London 2012. You know, I got tickets through an ex-Scottish para player, Connor Gordon. He got 2 tickets, and we went down to London 2012, and we watched Ross Wilson, Will Bailey, Aaron McKibben win their team bronze. And on the same day, we managed to see Jane Campbell and Sarah Head win their Paralympic medal as well. And that was like, I seen these guys as absolute heroes. You know, Dave Weatherall's just hit his flying shot a couple of days previously that went viral, and I was like, wow, these guys are incredible. They're playing table tennis. They're you know, absolute icons. And the main thing is, you can see just how much it means to them and how much they enjoy it. And I was like, after seeing London 2012, I was like, that's it. I want to focus completely on table tennis, you know. And that was when I sort of like completely stopped playing any other sports. You know, I wouldn't even go for a game of fives with my mates from school. I'd be like, no, I don't want to risk hurting myself or anything. You know, I just wanted to play table tennis. And at first they were a bit like, you don't want to come play football, you want to go play table tennis. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And they just didn't understand that I had, you know, completely changed my mindset. I'd been made my mind up that I was going to go and chase something that was a lot bigger than myself.
Right, so still back to Terry, and I know Terry's a joiner by trade, and I think he actually cut a bat and moulded it to you somehow. I heard you mentioned this in December, and I'm sure the viewers will be really interested to know how you achieved a bat that absolutely suits you. And I know Terry was involved in that.
Terry was involved in it. Terry didn't cut the bat himself, but he did arrange for it to happen on the first night so the first night I turned up at the club. Terry had already arranged for me to get to and from the club every Tuesday and Thursday. He'd arranged, as you said, to get a bat made, which was a special bat, and he'd already arranged one-to-one coaching for me for at least a year. And this was all on day one. And this was just because Terry seen something in me that, I guess you'll need to ask him what that was, but he seen something in me that I guess there was always that competitive edge from me. So I reckon he maybe saw that I could go on and do some stuff later on. It just took me a while to realise it. But Terry, got the bat made. So we had this table tennis bat made up, and it was through one of the senior members at the club who did it, no questions asked, because Terry asked him to do it. So of course he did it, and he sadly passed now. But he made this bat, and the handle was genuinely about this long, so it was about 3 times a regular bat handle. And that was so that because in the beginning, the initial stages, I didn't have a prosthetic arm to play. So we still had this makeshift tea towel with Velcro wrapped around it, so the best way to stop that flying off and hitting someone would be if we've got a longer lever to attach it to. So if we've got a longer handle, then it's easier to attach to my arm, and that's when I used to play. So the first bat that I've got it's like, if you ever watch the old Save exhibition matches where he whips out like a frying pan and stuff, it's like that, but except for me, it's the length of the handle is ridiculous and not the size of the bat head. It's incredible. So Terry's still got that. He's still got my first bat, because since then Terry came up with the idea of after we met some of the GB coaches, he was like, right, I want to get you a prosthetic made up. So he helped me go to the Westmark clinic and what was then the Southern General Hospital in Glasgow, and he was there on the first initial appointments to get the arm made sure that it was at the right angle and the bat was going to be attached correctly, and we had loads of prototypes. That was a long process. That took us maybe 12 to 18 months to get right before we finally settled on the design, and it's now something that's not changed in about 7 or 8 years, the design of the arm and the bat. But yeah, it's in that sort of short window in the beginning, it progressed an awful lot, going from a bat that had the length of 3 handles to now actually the bat that I use almost has no handle whatsoever, because we cut it off.
You don't have it here with you, do you, Martin, by any chance, so the viewers can see it?
For want of a better pun, I don't have it close at hand. I'm sorry.
Brilliant. Right, Mark, shall we? I think we've given Martin an easy time. I think it's time to give him a hard time. Let's give him the surefire, shall we?
Yes, I have the pleasure of reading Surefire this week, created by our own, Scottish TT legend, Peter Shaw. So, Martin, question number 1. What are you, a spin-based player, power-based, or is it 50-50?
For me, spin. On the forehand.
Timing. Do you take the ball early, top of the bounce, or after?
It varies. Forehand, I go top of the bounce. Backhand, for me, it's early.
I've been watching some of your YouTube videos. You're hitting that forehand too late at times, so I disagree with you there.
You're probably
right. Most effective or strongest stroke?
For me, I'm a big fan of my forehand open up off backspin.
Least effective or weakest stroke?
Anything to do with the backhand.
From any player, the one stroke you wish you had?
It's got to be Calderano's two-handed flying backhand. That's amazing. I love watching him when he does that.
Either that or take Karanga's backhand. That's one of the best. Your best or favourite serve?
Short float, obviously.
Short. I think I've seen your fast long one, topspin kicker. You can do that one quite well.
Yeah, I do it well. I didn't say it was my favourite though.
The best server you've ever received against?
Michael Mays.
Favorite opponent type: a defender, spinny player, blocker, or someone who plays with power?
Someone that plays with power.
Your favorite opponent type? Same sort of questions.
Is that not the same question?
I thought I've got them maybe mixed up. That's why I don't do Shawfire normally. So we've got favourite opponent type, defender. So you said with power, least a favourite opponent type.
Oh, least favourite. A blocker, someone that just gets everything back but doesn't really do much in return.
Yeah. Best player you've ever played against?
Yeah, it's got to be Michael Mays again.
The victory that gave you the most pleasure?
Can I pretend that I beat Michael Mays? Victory that gave me the most pleasure was when I won the US Open in 2016, 15, I don't know. When I won the US Open, that was great. That was my first tournament win.
And the player you most admire?
Will Bailey, 100%. He's gone on to change the game for para players, and he's given us all a great image.
Perfect. Now, I wanted to actually ask about that Michael Mays match, if I can, because I would say of all the guests that we've had, probably only, well, I've played against Michael Mays, so I don't think that's possible for me to be on a guest for someone and had a match against Michael Mays throughout European Youth 99, Czech Republic, but he's probably got a little bit better since then. So, I mean, what was like that experience, obviously, at Drumchapel at the anniversary last year, wasn't it?
Yeah.
19. How was that experience playing against Michael Mays?
Unbelievable. So Terry had actually arranged for Michael Mays and Zoran Primorac to come in the morning, and they did like a little coaching session with us. So, you know, earlier on that day, I practiced with Primorac for about an hour and a half, and then I got on with Mays for about 45 minutes, and I was just living the dream. I thought that was incredible, you know. So they're training with me, and they're giving me, you know, tips and advice and all sorts. And then it came to the evening, and I still didn't know who. I knew I was going to play one of them, but I still didn't know who it was going to be. And it was literally just as it was announced, Terry went, "You're going to play Mays," and I was like, "This is incredible. This is the guy's bat that I'm using. You know, I use a Michael Mays blade, and I'm like, this is incredible. I'm playing the guy that inspired the bat that I use, and he's such a nice guy, and I probably shouldn't say this, but we had a few beers after the match together and just chatted and had a great time, and you know, he wished me all the best going forward and stuff, and like leading up to the major championships, he's like messaged me on Instagram like, "Oh, good luck," and I'm like, that's an incredible touch, because you know, he could quite easily have done his bit at the club and just moved on, and he still sort of looks out for things like that. So I thought that was amazing. So the whole experience of playing Michael Mays was just unbelievable.
Brilliant. Dave, I've got more questions, but it's, if you want to throw it back.
Have you got me on YouTube?
Yeah. So in YouTube, just trying to. So during the lockdown period that we've been in, obviously normally you'd be in Sheffield, where you've not been able to get to over this period. What training do you do in general? That's from Ben Hart again. So what training over the lockdown period?
As you said, it's difficult. You know, usually we're in Sheffield Monday to Friday. That's where we train, eat, sleep, table tennis, repeat. And that's been difficult. So one thing our coaches have done, you know, they've had great initiatives. They have set up Zoom calls like we are doing, but we'll do shadow play. And then sort of following on the back of that, we'll do like an at-home strength and conditioning session where, you know, obviously we use what's at hand, but if it's doing like squats, when we do like squat to a chair rather than, you know, in a squatting rack and things like that, So that's great. And then I've been fortunate enough that the teams actually sent me a table and a robot to play with. So I'm just waiting on delivery for that. So it's one of the new Amicus Prime robot fancy ones that I'm really excited to try, because, you know, obviously I'm desperate to play table tennis again, but it's obviously difficult in this moment in time. And then outside of that, you know, I looked at my fitness levels and I was like, right, how can I push on at this moment in time? Because now obviously I've got a lot more time to focus on my cardiovascular fitness. So I took up running. I've been running for the majority of lockdown now, and I've been really pleased with my progress. And you know, that's something that I'm really happy I've been able to do, because when I train full time, I can't really go running because I'm either too knackered or I run the risk of getting injured and then can't play table tennis. And I've also been very fortunate that one of my sponsors, WKG Sports, they you know, helped me out massively by providing me with a resistance bike for the house. So they sent up a resistance bike so that I can do sprint sessions and things like that, and recovery sessions on the bike. So that's just incredible. So I've been so fortunate in that sense. But yeah, I've taken up running, and as I said, we do the Zoom calls where we do shadow play and things like that. And then obviously, you know, the bike and stuff. So it's just making sure that with the time that we've got on our hands, that we try and keep busy and keep to somewhat of a routine as we possibly can, because, you know, our ultimate aim is obviously to, as you said, get back down to Sheffield, get training full time. But it's just not possible at the moment.
Just actually one other questions that come on YouTube, just talking about it from Killy Raj, I think it's Graham Stevenson from North Ayrshire, talking about obviously doing running and different activities. Do you change prosthetic legs, or do you have different legs for different activities for that?
Different leg for every day of the week. No, I'm kidding. No, so I've only got two legs. So I've got my everyday leg that I would use every day, as the title suggests. So that's got a knee unit, which helps me, you know, walk normally, as it were. And then I've got my table tennis blade, which is a little bit shorter than my residual limb, just so that I can get a little bit lower to the table, because without the knee unit, obviously it can't bend. And that was just so that I can put all my weight through it and transfer that weight without running the risk of, you know, the knee opening up and that joint being exposed, and then I would just hit the deck. You know, so that's the last thing you want to be doing, is playing a rally and you hit the deck because your knee's bent or whatever. So the running blade is my table tennis blade. And that's something, again, that I've been fortunate that the NHS have provided me with one, as well as private sponsors in the past. So, you know, it's just it's definitely a massive tool. You do need the right leg for the right occasion. That's 100%.
Perfect. I'm sure the wife, when you got married, you weren't allowed to put your running leg on so you could run away at the altar.
It went missing like the week running up to the wedding. It was strange. I couldn't find it.
Right. So you're still at Drumchapel. You've got to start competing, Martin. When did that start? Actual playing games.
It would have been a while, because obviously, as I said, for the first, you know, sizable block of me playing, it was just one-to-ones with one of the club players, Graham Donnelly, and then one of the other coaches at the club, Steph McCallum. She helped me out a lot. So Graham and Steph took me sort of under their wing. I worked more closely with Graham, and it went from there. So it was a while before that I started playing matches in terms of a proper competitive setup. You know, if I ever played a match, it would be against some of the other kids at the evening session of the club. You know, so obviously you're competing, but there's not that actual competition scenario. So it was a while before I did that, and it took even longer before I got any wins or anything. You know, at the time around me, there was some really good opponents, you know, in terms of the para side of things. You know, Peter Cameron, who I'm sure you know very well. He was obviously like the best para player in Scotland when I first started. So I would say I had a lot of good matches against him, but that would be a lie. Peter used to just dust me off, and he was a good challenging player. So it took a while for me to get competing at a level where I was, you know, seeing some noticeable improvements.
And then your first title, you're starting to improve gradually. your first title?
That would have been the Scottish National Championships. So it's not a bad way to start off your career as becoming national champion. So that would have been 2015, I think. So that's what, 4 years after I started playing before I finally won something, which is a long time. But yeah, Scottish national champion at that time. I beat Connor Gordon in the final, and I think that was like the first and only ever time that I beat Connor in competition. He stopped playing not too long after that, but up until that day, I'd never beaten him in competition or even in training. So that was really special for me, because it was a really good match, and we're still really good friends. So even though he doesn't play anymore, that's definitely one of my most memorable matches was winning that for the first time. And it's great to say that you're Scottish champion. Of
course. And then obviously you're now beginning to spread your wings. And when did you start competing in the USA Open? I've got a whole list of the Slovenian Open, Costa Brava, Bangkok, Czech Open. When did all this global table tennis, was it on the back of that win, or was there still a few hurdles to?
So there was definitely still a few hurdles, as you said. So my first international competition came in 2013, and that was when Terry took me and the other Scottish boys to Hungary to get classified, and then once you're classified, you can compete in more tournaments. So Terry took us in 2013 to Hungary, and then I think in 2013 I had one competition for Great Britain as like a development athlete, and that was the Czech Open. And then I had, very few, and I think I had, like, I played the Spanish Open the next year, and things like that. So I've maybe played like a very small handful of tournaments, and then it wasn't really until like after 2015 where I was fortunate enough to get a bit more opportunity. And as you said, it then just, you listed off some amazing places there. It sort of kicked on from there. I started to improve due to my training and things like that. And then it's taken me all over the world.
Now, you're still a young athlete. When would you say you're about to reach your peak? The average age is 27. Do you think that's going to be 27 for you? It's going to be 30, or have you got like a target when you're going to peak?
I'm just glad that you said I'm still a young athlete. At 26, you don't often hear that. But yeah, for me, sort of general rule of thumb would be that, as you said, 26, 27, late 20s, early 30s, you'd look to peak as a regularly able-bodied athlete. But it's not uncommon for para-athletes to peak a little bit later, and that's due to a number of factors, whether that be the length of time you've been involved in sport, because naturally that can come a little bit later in life, like myself, before I started competing at table tennis. It can be the impairment level changes, as we spoke earlier about classification. So for me, hopefully, there's hopefully for me, I'd like to peak sometime around late summer of 2024. I'd love to peak for that, as I'm sure you can probably work out why.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometime late 2024, I'd love to peak, and then hopefully just hold on to that for as long as possible. But yeah, for me, obviously, so as it stands, I've not qualified for Tokyo and can't qualify for Tokyo unless the only other way I can really get there is if I'm granted a wild card, or if I win the World Qualification Tournament, which is set to take place this coming April. So that's like the only way that I'm going to get to Tokyo is win that competition or the wild card. But for me, I've got to just focus on improving, and of course I'll train as hard as I can to try and win that competition. But in terms of peaking, for me, I want that to be, for Paris, and hopefully take a medal for Scotland and Great Britain. And I'd be 30 then. I'll have just turned 30 in the May, and then obviously later on in the summer it'll be Paris. But then if you look at the next games in LA 2028, I'm only 34 then. So for a para athlete, that's still that's still a good career. You know, so I think it's just for me, I'm still learning so much about the game, you know, and I'm still trying to gain as much experience as I possibly can, and so yeah, so hopefully another 4 years, and I'd look to be hopefully pushing for a medal at Paralympic Games.
Now, Mark, I think we had a second question from our national cadet champion, Shannon Brown, or have you covered them both?
I would say that we would come to that later on, Dave, more as a sort of rounding up a little bit. I mean, just actually a question I want to listen to Martin was that I remember actually playing against Martin. I don't know if Martin remembers it. It was like Scottish National League how many years ago. No one ever remembers playing me. It's fine. But I just want your thoughts of playing against able-bodied people in Scotland tournaments. I mean, this year I've watched a couple of times West of Scotland Open. Actually, one of our young players from Dundee, Andrew Nimmo, he had an epic match against him at West of Scotland. It's also been probably covering it from two angles. When you first came into Hull watching a Scottish tournament, when you first started seeing the scene, what your thoughts were, and obviously now entering tournaments and Scottish National Championships, you've got to play against Gavin Rungay. I think it was the second year in a row, wasn't it, or something? Is that right, or was it? First year?
Something like that. Yeah.
But basically, your thoughts about playing in Scotland, and then it'll lead me on to a third question after that as well.
I think for a para player, you have to play able-bodied. You know, the para level is at a level now that if you're not playing able-bodied, you're not competing on a para scale. You know, if you solely try and complete para, it's not going to happen. You know, that's something that we do as a GB team. Is, you know, we all go to the Table Tennis England Grand Prix. You know, so as you said, I would come into Scottish tournaments at the very beginning of my career, and I would get as much exposure and match practice as I possibly could, because at the end of the day, you're still playing table tennis. You know, it doesn't matter if you got 4 limbs or no limbs or whatever, you're still playing table tennis. So you need that experience, you need that match exposure. And that just builds to the whole learning curve of the game. So, you know, it's something that all of our guys in the British Paralympic team, all we do is train and compete, and whether that be an international competition where we represent GB, or whether that be, you know, a domestic competition where we play able-bodied and represent our clubs or whoever it may be. So yeah, it's paramount for a para athlete to compete on the able-bodied circuit. And I think also just for young developing athletes, just, you know, if it's feasible, enter as many tournaments as you possibly can, because it's experience that you'll rack up without even knowing it.
But I mean, just to lead on to that about, again, West Scotland Open, I think yourself, Declan Tobin, Ryan Henry had the epic group of 3 battle. I think actually one of the matches of the year I watched, not because you're on tonight, Martin, was you and Ryan in that match. But what's your thoughts on sort of development of para table tennis in Scotland? Is there anything holding it back, or what more can we do to get para table tennis players into clubs like which happened, which Terry done a great job of in Drumchapel? Is there things that hold it back, or what's your thoughts on that?
In terms of things being held back, you know, I actually don't agree with that. You know, I think the facilities are there, the coaches are there. You know, it's just all about having that inner drive and motivation to go and compete. You know, it's you know, as you said, you've got myself, you get Ryan, you've got Declan. You know, I know Iona McLean still plays just in the club, but she doesn't really compete anymore. But so table tennis is there for whatever level you want to play it at, you know, whether that be club or push on to be an international athlete or try your best to be so. In terms of restrictions, I wouldn't say there's any. I think it's all just down to the athlete. You know, we've got great coaches in Scotland, we've got great clubs. You know, we run a lot of tournaments, you know, for the small nation that we are. I think we put on a fair amount of tournaments, you know, and there's I know that especially if you get involved in the training aspect from a young age, you know, you can. I remember training with the junior squad when I was 18, 19, you know, training with the able-bodied junior squad. So, you know, that you're not held back or restricted in that sense. Accommodations will be made to make you play and help you play at the level you want to play. It's just all about taking those opportunities.
And that's a question that came in there from David Hayes, which you covered off very well about advice about someone who's contemplating to get into table tennis. Basically, your advice is go and do it. Basically, go and find a club and.
Yeah. Absolutely, go find a club, and because you, as I said, you can play table tennis to whatever level you want to. It's just all about how you apply yourself, So if you want to play as a social player and just have fun with your mates, do it. That's brilliant. That's fantastic. You're playing the sport. You're keeping fit. You're keeping active. I love it. If you want to go and be a club player, you want to represent, whether it be Drumchapel or North Ayrshire or something like that, or EKTTC at, interleague when you represent the regions, or at like things like the Aberdeen Open or something like that. Brilliant. If you want to go and try and really push yourself and try and push for these national titles at your age group or whatever, then go do it, because you're going to get the support. You just need to take that opportunity. So there's so many different levels to table tennis, but for me, I just want to see people playing. I want to see the game get bigger, and that can only happen if folk pick up a bat and play.
I think that's great advice. I think I took a hiatus away from the game, away from a while, and then I just came back in along to a practice night one night. And my love for table tennis over the last few years is playing with club mates that I've done in Dundee and Edinburgh. But I'm not going to play for Scotland again unless we're a few years off a vet, so maybe we'll get there. But you're absolutely right. I think it's the social side and the love of playing the game. So David, if you're contemplating it, get involved. Find your local club. That support and that helps out there.
I think what has come over this last 5 minutes, and I'm really pleased it has, because I think had Martin not been a talented player, I think Terry would have still helped him. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that Terry's only looking for the super talented players. And I would say the same for Billy Gibbs in Edinburgh, or your dad when they were coaching. Obviously, it's nice to get a star, but what turns any coach on is the willingness to learn. And if that player reaches his potential in Division 9 of the Perth League, then you've got a happy coach. So that's a good point, Martin. You've when you were saying players at any level, and it takes me onto another.
Can I just touch on that before you move on? Sorry,
yeah.
I know for a fact if you ask Terry, if you were to call Terry up right now and say, "Is Martin a talented player?" I am 100% confident he would say no, and he would turn around and say that he's a hard-working player. And that's, as you said, it's someone that's willing to listen, and that's how you reach your potential. And as you said, if it's being the best you can be in Division 9 or whatever, then that's fantastic. But yeah, so you're completely right. Terry never took me on because I was a talented player. He took me on because I listened to him as a coach and I respected what he had to say.
Excellent point. Now, a question for Martin that I don't know the answer to many of the questions I've asked him tonight, but is table tennis probably the best sport where able-bodied and para can mix in a league and not play on equal terms, the most welcoming? What is how could you compare it with a disabled basketball player or cricketer or footballer? Would you feel that the unit in table tennis is well? I don't know.
I know what you're getting at, and I totally agree. I think table tennis is the most compatible sport in terms of mixing it able-bodied and para. And that is because we play with the same equipment, the same rules, the same everything. The only thing that changes is if you play a wheelchair athlete, you must serve off the back of the table. It must be, but that doesn't mean you can't serve short. You can serve as short as you like, so there's that aspect of the game where you still have to play tactical. I know some great wheelchair athletes that would beat some very good standing able-bodied athletes, and that's just because they're good at table tennis. There's no other answer than they're good at table tennis. So I think for the fact that we use all the same equipment, same courts, same rules, same umpire. You see umpires all the time. I'll go and watch like Fan Zhendong play against Dmitry Ovtcharov, and I'm like, oh, I had that umpire 2 weeks ago. And that's the thing. So you get the same everything. So it's definitely so compatible to be able to mix the able-bodied and the para side. And for me, it's something that I would like to see more of. Obviously, there's no issues for a para player entering a an English Grand Prix or whatever, that's fine. You know, you just put in your band and that's it. You play your band, you play the Open, you play whatever you want. In terms of an international side of things, you know, obviously Ibrahim Hamatu from Egypt, who I'm sure you've seen plays with the bat in his mouth. You know, he's done a few exhibitions at able-bodied pro tours, and I'd love to see more of an integration like that. You know, getting it, because that's, I think the para side, we have our own voice and we have our own identity, but sometimes we just need a little bit more of exposure in terms of folks seeing what we can do and going from there.
Martin, so I thought you were going to throw in, we were doing the Shawfire about the best server you've played against, Ibrahim Hamadu. I can't pronounce his surname. I mean, you could barely return a serve in that match. His serve was unbelievable.
Can I sidetrack a little bit and tell you a funny story?
Yes.
Right. So I'm playing, back end of last year, I'm playing China Open. And so I'm playing team event with a German guy called Thomas Rau, very good player, multiple Paralympian. And so we're chatting away, and you know, you know how friendly table tennis is in terms of off the table. So I'm you know, as I said, this guy's multiple Paralympian. I've never even been to the Paralympics, and I sat there and I had a joke about him getting taxied, as we call it. You know, so for those that are new to table tennis, basically it's an unreturnable serve. You get served down the line, you miss the ball, and so I was winding up Thomas Rau about being at the Paralympic Games on live TV all over the world, and the highlight reel that is always showed, if you look at any table tennis highlight reel of Rio 2016, it's Ibrahim Hamatu taxiing Thomas Rau. So we're playing team event, and I go and play Ibrahim, and we get to the what it turned out to be the final set. I was like 2-0, 9-7 up, and it was Ibrahim's serve, and he's taxied me right down the line. And Thomas Rau, my team partner, jumped up and celebrated because he was so happy that it happened in return to me. And I finished off the game just like trying not to laugh, because I was like, I can't believe he's done me like that. And so yeah, Ibrahim's got a great serve. He's got a great serve. But yeah, I wasn't embarrassed. I respected the talent, but I couldn't believe my own teammate jumped up to celebrate against me. So yeah, that was funny.
Perfect.
Mark, just double check how we're doing on YouTube. Have we caught up? Or?
Well, there is a question. I'm just saving a couple just as we go through Martin's career. It'd be good just to throw in these questions, but yeah, a couple of good ones there.
Okay, I'm looking at your credentials in your CV, and it's difficult to pick out because you had so many highlights. Let's talk about the USA Open, shall we? You won that. When was it? Give us your preparation, your tournament, and your celebration.
So for me, it started off as quite a good tournament. First of all, it was in Las Vegas, so we rocked up to Las Vegas, and I was like, wow, this is an incredible place to have a competition. I know they do a lot of vet stuff there now, but it was incredible. So we were in this big convention center in Las Vegas, and this was one of the great things that I touched on earlier, was that actually they ran our competition pretty much simultaneously with the US Open able-bodied. You know, so that was incredible. We had our own little section, as it were, and that was the para competition, and it was great. Obviously difficult to manage with, you know, so many tables and things like that, but I won't go into that. So we played a competition. I got off to a good start, win my first few group matches against some tricky opponents. You know, I beat what turned out to be a couple of Paralympians in the run up to that, to me getting to the final. So I played played the group matches and all that, and like 3-day competition. So on day 2, I played the quarterfinal, semi-final. I know the next day I've got the final. It's going to be, I think it was my second final ever in terms of an international para competition. So I know I'm playing in the final the next day, and I got back to the hotel room, went for some dinner, and that night I slipped and fell in the shower, and I ended up landing on my stump, so my left leg, which is the leg that I wear the prosthetic on, which is naturally a weaker leg for me, and I was in excruciating pain. I didn't even know if I could play the next day. I couldn't. The next morning I woke up, I couldn't get my leg on because it was so swollen. So I was so nervous and scared. I thought I was going to have to tell my coach, Sean Marcos, at the time. I thought I was going to have to tell him that I can't play the final. I can't get my leg on. If I can't get my leg on, I can't play. Thankfully, the guy that I was sharing with, Billy Shelton, one of our other para players, he helped me sort of get into my leg. He like wrapped a cold towel around my leg, attacked like a compress to take swelling down, and thankfully that worked. But I was still in a fair bit of pain just walking to the venue and stuff like that. So I remember knocking up and thinking, I'm going to have to do something special here just to compete. Thankfully, I got some painkillers and that helped. But then in the final set, I ended up, I don't know if I dived for the ball or whatever, but I ended up just falling over in the final set. And again, I've smacked my leg and I was in a lot of pain. I managed to, Mark touched on it earlier, long topspin serve, one of my better ones. I managed to do 2 of them in a row to win the match. And the guy I was sharing with, Billy, he's recording the match because he knew this was going to be my first competition win. So he's recording it. And as I win the final point, I just collapsed on the table. And it wasn't through, relief or excitement. It was just, I was in bloody agony. So I just wanted to just take all the weight off me. So I just collapsed on the table and I was in so much pain. So my first tournament win, I didn't really get to celebrate the way I would have liked to have done. And that was difficult, but that gave me a lot of confidence and a lot of resilience going forward, knowing that, you are going to get these knocks at tournaments, whether it be physical like I did or emotional when you have a bad loss and you need to try and recover from that. But that gave me a lot of resilience and a lot of experience going forward that, you can tap into these emotions and just get through it until the end of the match.
Okay, was that your highlight of your career, or was your world bronze medal the highlight of your career, or is there another highlight of your career which I've not picked on?
For me, I think the highlight of my career has to be the back-to-back European Team Championship gold medals. I had a very small part in those teams, but to just still be actually a part of the team of David Weatherall and Paul Karabardak, who, to be a part of their team when they consecutively won back-to-back European team golds, it's very a proud moment for me to say that I've got those 2 medals as well as the world bronze. It's funny because I actually played in the World Championships when we got bronze and didn't play in both European Championships when we got gold. So maybe that's telling you something. but no, I owe those 3 massive accolades that you mentioned, the back-to-back European golds and world team bronze medals, I owe that to Dave and Paul, because they're exceptional players and they're both top 10 in the world, both I think 3-time Paralympians, a great experience, and it's something that they definitely pull me along, because we always have very competitive matches, not just in training but at the British Para Championships and things like that. So it's to say that I'm 2-time European champ thanks to Dave and Paul was a big honour for me. And hopefully, as the years go on, I can get more game time and sort of repay their hard work and their efforts in that sense by bringing home my own medals.
What I'm also interested in, Martin, and I often try to teach young players this, is everybody loves their paternal coach and you'd love to take them with you. But when you play on the international stage, you often have many different coaches. So when you've represented either yourself or Scotland or Britain or whoever, have you had lots of different coaches away, or have you had to self-coach? Or
very seldomly you'll have to self-coach, but it does happen. But yeah, as you said, when you play internationally, you can't always take your coach with you. So I've only, due to the way the para setup works, I've only represented Scotland once. That was in Hungary 2013 at my classification tournament, my first tournament. Since then, it's been Great Britain, whether that be through development ranks, pathway ranks, or now performance level, as we call it. So I've had a whole host of coaches, and to be honest, it's just something that you just have to, it's part of the game. You just have to work with it. It's just something that's the good thing is for us with the GB setup is we work with our coaches day in, day out, but we have a group of 4 or 5 coaches, so we know we're going to get one of them. We usually try and work it out, so if possible we have the same one, and you do a lot of one-to-one coaching and chats with that coach. But of course, as tournaments go on, it's not always possible. But yeah, it's something that you just have to be able to adapt to the game and adapt to the different styles of coaching. But it's just making sure that you understand that the coach in your corner, regardless, as you said, if it's that paternal coach that you love and get along with, great. Regardless of who it is, they want you to win. And that's something that I know some younger players don't always understand. Well, that's not my coach, and he doesn't want me to win, and that's never the case. If a coach is in your corner, they 100% want you to win. And it's natural that growing up and just in general life, you're never going to connect with everyone on the same level, and you might not have that 100% great relationship, but ultimately that coach in your corner wants you to win. And that's a massive thing for me, is you've got to believe that whoever's on your bench, they're in it for you.
Yeah. Does it happen as it happens? I mean, I took the England team or the New Zealand team or wherever I've been working. I've often taken a team away, and you'll have 5 players on at the same time, so you can only coach one, and therefore I get the players on the night before, and I say the highest ranked player at the time has the coach, so there's no disputing who the coach is going to be with, but you have to be self-sufficient. Now, I don't know whether that's the case in para table tennis, or would you all have a coach each every time you play?
We try to work it with our coaching staff and our athletes. We try to work it that every athlete has a coach.
Wow.
That's difficult though when you have 16 athletes and sometimes 3 or 4 coaches. But the joys of the Paralympic system is that only certain classes will play at the one time. So we try and work it out. We've got a good knack for it now of working it out when you're going to be on, and obviously you get the draw and stuff, so you can work it out from there. But as you said, if there's going to be a shortage of coaches, then that's where a group of athletes like ourselves, as I said, we've got 16. That's where I can call on one of my teammates, and vice versa. Can you sit in my corner? Can you coach me? And of course, our coaching staff are fine with that. And as you said, priority tends to go to the higher class athlete. But it's not uncommon at the same time to go from the most situationally based athlete. So that could be, so if you're a higher ranked athlete playing against, no disrespect, but to a lower ranked athlete, then the coach might overlook you because they back you a little bit more in terms of that situation. But if it's a match that on paper would be a little bit more 50-50, or a match that, because the way the tournament schedule works, is a little bit more high pressure in terms of the higher ranked athlete could be playing a group match, but the lower ranked athlete could have a quarter final or whatever, then it tends to go in that favour. So for us, it's more the importance of the match. But
Yeah.
we still 90% of the time, we've always got a coach in our corner.
Oh, wow. Mark, that's a luxury, isn't it?
Yeah. But to be fair, when I was growing up, my dad was in the corner, so I wish he wasn't there half the time. So.
Okay, then, Mark, what have we got from YouTube?
Well, I'll come to that but in a second, question on YouTube, but it was just something I wanted to ask Martin about was basically, obviously, growing up in table tennis, and obviously in the middle of this, so it's not been covered off, is your time in the Rickshaw Challenge and the One Show, and how much it inspired you. Those that are watching that don't know, the One Show every year for children in need, basically travel different parts of the country, and Martin was part of that team. How much did it inspire you, Martin? And going forward in the mindset of your determination for table tennis?
What an absolute fantastic experience it was. So it was the 2013 Rickshaw Challenge, as you said. So the Children in Need charity supported the Drum Chapel Table Tennis Club through grants and funding and things like that, and they contacted the club looking for people to volunteer to have the potential to go and be part of this. And I got through the sort of processes and all of that, and I ended up being selected, and that was an incredible experience. So we cycled 700 miles across the UK. So we started in Northern Ireland at the Giant's Causeway and finished in, I think it's Elstree Studios in London. So we went from Northern Ireland all the way down to Larne, got the ferry across, and we had a rolling road on the ferry. So we were always cycling the bike. The rickshaw was always moving. So it was 700 miles in 7 days. And we raised over £1.5 million for charity, and that was something that was an incredible experience for me, and an experience that I would never have had the opportunity to do if it hadn't been for being at the club and being involved with Terry and table tennis. And one of the most memorable moments of that whole thing was I can't remember where we were, mainly because it was like 3:30 in the morning, because the bike didn't stop. So it was like 3:30 in the morning. It was pouring down with rain, going through this little town, I think, in the middle of England, and there was people on the street. There was people on the street like waving and cheering as you went by at 3:30 in the morning in the pouring rain, because you were doing this incredible challenge for children in need, and that was so like humbling, and that made you want to like keep going and keep going. As I said, like it wasn't nice. You're sitting there, at, middle of the night, pouring rain. It's cold, it's wet, it's windy. The last thing you want to be doing is riding a bicycle through some strange town that you've never been to. You want to be tucked up in your bed. So when you got the support like that in return, it was incredible. And then obviously when the whole thing ended and we've seen the amount of money that we'd managed to raise, 1.5 something million for charity, that was amazing. That made it all worth it, because 700 miles in 7 days isn't fun. But we made it fun.
Brilliant. We're obviously talking about sacrifices, and obviously with your table tennis, obviously married in the last couple of years.
That's not a sacrifice. You can't say that.
You'll
get me in trouble, by the way.
Point about more the fact that obviously that's number one in your life, and clearly table tennis is number two. So I saved it there, Martin. So it's okay.
You're absolutely right there.
How did you? Obviously working, and obviously your job is table tennis. Being down in Sheffield, I think you're in Dumbarton. How's it like shuffling that, being a table tennis player after lockdown? Does she want you out? Is she can't wait to get you back, or back down to Sheffield? How do you
changes, that changes every day of the week. No, as you said, it's difficult. Me and Siobhan have been married since December 2018, and it's something that, for want of a better phrase, Siobhan knew what she was signing up for. She knew that I was devoted to my craft of table tennis and being down in Sheffield. And for a period of time, we lived together down here. Siobhan had a job not too nearby. So we were living together in Sheffield, but then, as you said, Siobhan went back home to just outside Glasgow in Dumbarton, and that was that. And we made it work. We constantly FaceTimed and video called and things like that, because there was no guarantee that I would be able to get up at the weekend to see her. We train Monday to Friday, and then if you're competing, or if you're away at a competition, or if you're in a real serious block of training and you're knackered, you don't want to be driving for 5 hours, to then have like 1 day and a bit to then drive another 5 hours to. So Siobhan's been incredible. She's been so understanding of, that I'm trying to chase something that's bigger than myself and be part of the Paralympic Games and, compete and hopefully win medals for my country. So one of the best things for me during all this lockdown period is the fact that I've been able to spend time at home in Dumbarton with Siobhan and have married life, and actually see each other every night. And that's, for me, that's definitely made this whole situation, a million times easier, because the fact that I get to spend every day with Siobhan is so much easier, as you said, rather than looking at our phones every night to communicate.
Yeah. I'll go for a question on YouTube from John McNamara. What do you enjoy most Is it playing for yourself at tournaments, or is being part of the team for Scotland or Great Britain?
Oh, it's got to be part of the team. It's such a great atmosphere when you go to an international competition, and you've got your teammates in the crowd and they're going nuts, and the coaches and all that, and it's just, don't get me wrong, I love representing myself in drum chapel and things like that, but when you play internationally, it's such a buzz and it's so much fun, and there's that added pressure because you're not just representing yourself or your club, you're representing your whole country. And for me, that added pressure just makes it that little bit more fun, and it's incredible. It's such a buzz.
Brilliant. I'll maybe hand back to Dave, sort of more talking about finishing the career before there's just a couple of questions there at the end that maybe we'll come back to.
Okay, we've reached your highlights. We're now in lockdown. What's your plan after lockdown? I know 2024 is your goal, but there's 4 years between now and then.
There is indeed. So obviously for me, as soon as it's safe to do so, I need to get back into full-time training. It's my job, it's my life, it's what I do as I play table tennis. So whether that means being back down in Sheffield, or whether that's now looking at a position where I can hopefully stay in Scotland, or some sort of more of a balanced effect. Who knows what that's going to look like? But for me, I need to be training. I need to be playing table tennis. And then, as you said, that's I've got the goals of pushing on. Hopefully, I think it's yet to be announced, like Birmingham 2022 Commonwealth Games. I would love to represent Scotland. It's something that I've only ever done once, was represent Scotland at the Hungarian Open 2013. So I'm desperate to pull on that saltire. But to represent GB is obviously amazing for me. So what it looks like going forward, I don't have that answer. All I know is it's me playing table tennis, hopefully every day, and improving.
Great. Mark, I'm going to go back to you for those.
Yeah, so it's a good point about, and you probably don't want to talk about it, but life after table tennis. I mean, obviously right now you're in the zone of training table tennis, but what's your aspirations? From Ewan McLaughlin, what aspirations for life after table tennis? Have you considered using your degree from UWS to develop passport further in a sport development role?
Well, as David said very early on, I'm still a young athlete. But no, you're totally right. It's something that every athlete at some point or another, you need to think about. You need to think about what you're going to do after your sport, because whether you like it or not, your sporting career is going to end. And it's usually before you want it to. So yeah, it's something it's a great question. It's something that I've thought about, and I feel like I'm very privileged to have a lot of options, whether that be going into coaching. I'd love to obviously develop table tennis in Scotland a lot more. And that's obviously very difficult to do if you're living down in Sheffield and training full time. So I'd love to develop table tennis in Scotland a lot more, which would certainly use my my degree from UWS. Got to give them a plug. So yeah, I've got a sport development degree from UWS. So I think I could definitely put that to good use and try and help develop Scottish table tennis. But also I'd love to, as David said, one of the first times he heard me speak was at an after dinner conference. And that's something that I get a lot of enjoyment from, and having the opportunity to speak in front of people at a large scale event where as David will know, I got a few folk coming up to me after the event, and just to hear what they say, their feedback from it, and to know that you've hopefully passed on a little bit of value means so much to me. It's incredible to be in that position. One of the things that I often say is that the best thing to ever happen to me was that I was born with no hands and one leg. And it's because I'm in a position that I can then hopefully provide value to someone and help them and provide that sort of feedback and give back for them. So yeah, there's lots of options for after table tennis. Hopefully I get to explore as many of them as I possibly can.
Well, I hope they're a long way away after you've secured a medal at the Paralympics. That would definitely be the...
Yeah, hopefully a long way away. But
and
as I said,
definitely
you never
earn
know.
a lot more money after dinner speaking if you've got that Olympic medal. So
it's not all about the cash, but it helps. But it helps. If anyone wants to, that's another story.
No, as I nearly always say every week, he nearly always gets a mention, but probably one of the most dedicated table tennis players in Scotland. even now, is Neil Cameron. He's absolutely buzzing. Every time he's been selected to play for Scotland, he always says when. It's never, well, I've got to look at my diary, and it's always when, and the answer is yes immediately. And he's still buzzing, and is now a vet. So Martin, you've got 14 years to catch up with Neil. So let him be an inspiration to you. One of the things that you quite rightly corrected me on, and I'm glad you did, because I once went to a sports psychology conference where the whole weekend was we should go motivation spotting rather than talent spotting, because talent can come and go. Where if you find somebody with the right motivation will probably overcome talent, or all things being equal. Now, one thing that's come over clearly, crystal clear this last hour and 25 minutes is your motivation. And as you said, Terry said, you might not have been the most talented player. I don't know, but your motivation has pushed you, and it will continue to push you, Martin. I am confident that you'll make 2024. I'm hoping I'm still involved in Table Tennis Scotland when you do. And but more importantly, I'm really, really hoping you're going to join us in 2022 in Birmingham, because I think all our teams will have a good chance. I'd like to say before I do, Mark, have we completed all the questions?
So there's probably one. There's actually two questions that I want to ask. One is from Shannon Brown. Was what obviously I think we know the answer was how much you love table tennis, but was there any moments at the start where this probably question fits in, where you had regrets, or you thought about actually this isn't the sport for me early on, or do you love it?
Absolutely not. I just love it, and whether that would be playing for Great Britain or playing for Drumchapel, I just love the game, and it's so much fun. And yeah, I've got no regrets whatsoever, and I've never thought about oh, what if I hadn't played, because quite frankly, I don't want to think about what if I hadn't played, because this game's changed my life. I've got so much to thank for playing this game. So yeah, I love it.
Perfect. And my final question evening was maybe about recognition of para table tennis. Do you feel it gets the recognition? Because doing a bit of research before the call tonight, with some of them, some of the matches on YouTube are brilliant. Some of the games that you've seen, do you feel that para table tennis gets the recognition it deserves? And if not, could we do more? Or basically, what's your point, your viewpoint on that, Martin?
I won't get too political. I'll just say, like everything in life, it could always be better.
Great answer.
Great, and not only if I can sort of continue, we have very active disability groups at Ward Road. They run great sessions there. Fife Institute, Aberdeen, and obviously in Glasgow. So I'm hoping there's been a lot of listeners from those groups there. Martin, once again, we always almost finish off with the same question. What is your advice to both able-bodied athletes and para-athletes?
Just play sport, have fun, stay active, and you never know where it can take you.
Martin Perry, you've been an inspiration, and thank you very much indeed. And next week, we have Charlotte Carey from Wales, who is world ranked. And the week after that, we have players who have turned into coaches with Steve Gertson, Paul Whiting, and Chris Bryan. So once again, Martin, Mark, and Matt, all the M's, thank you very much indeed. Good night.